In this video, we'll show you how to replace the rear axle on your Subaru Baja. This is located in the rear of the vehicle and behind the wheel. Let's get started. With the vehicle raised and supported, we can remove our wheel. We'll remove the lug nuts with a 19mm. If the wheel's stuck, you can thread one of the lug nuts about halfway back on. And I'm going to use a dead blow hammer on the back of the wheel. You want to try not to strike the rim and just strike the tire. And we can remove the wheel. On either side of our headers on the exhaust, we have three 14mm studs. We'll go ahead and remove those. We can do the same on the other side. Moving down the exhaust, we have another 14mm bolt right under the back of the transmission. Moving to the back of the vehicle, we can remove our exhaust hangers. Just going to use a small pry bar. And we have two more exhaust hangers at the very back of the exhaust. Now I'm going to use a pole jack to support the rear end of the exhaust while I remove the last two hangers. Now with an assistant helping me to lower the exhaust, we can just get the exhaust off of the hook right here on the bottom of the transmission. And we'll just drop this down and out of the way. On the back side of the subframe, we have two 17mm nuts holding the differential in. We'll go ahead and remove those. Moving forward along the differential, we have two more 17mm nuts we need to remove. Now we can remove the axle nut with a 32mm. I'm going to use a small pry bar on the back end of the drive shaft between the U-joint. And that'll allow me to hold that while I loosen up our 12mm nuts. And we can do the same with the other three. Before we drop the drive shaft down, I'm going to put a mark in one spot on the drive shaft. That'll let us know to put it back in that same orientation. The drive shaft is balanced, and that can throw off the balance if you install it in a different way. I'm using a strap to hold our differential to the jack that we're using. We can go ahead and remove the forward bolts. With our frontward mounts lowered enough, we can start to move the differential with the jack forward. As we start to lower the differential down, you can go ahead and pop the axle out. You want to be very careful of the CV joints as you're lowering this. And we can pop the other axle stub out of the other side of the diff. That'll make it easier as you come down. Bit by bit, you want to make the axles come out of the diff a little bit more each time you lower down on the jack. And there we go. The stub is out of the passenger side. Using a dead blow hammer, I'm going to hit the end of the axle stub to try to free that up from the hub. And we can go ahead and remove the axle. Before installing our new axle, I'm going to apply some anti-seize just to the stub at the outer portion of the axle. You want to try not to get it on the threads. Get the axle lined up in the hub, get the splines lined up, push it all the way in. We can start to thread the axle nut on. We'll just leave that loose for now. We can start to get the inner stub of the axle lined up with the differential. We'll start to go up with the jack, making sure that both sides, both axles on either side of the differential are going in smoothly. Now I'm going to use a punch and a hammer, and we'll just tap on the end of the axle to get it to set into the diff. We can start to jack up the diff, get the bolt holes to line up. We can get the bolts in and the nuts started on. Now we can hold the bolt from the backside with a wrench and snug these down. We'll do the same on the other side. And we can torque this to 81 foot-pounds. We'll do the same on the other side. Now we can go ahead and drop down the jack. Now we can reinstall the drive shaft, remembering that we have our markings. We'll go ahead and line those up. Get the washers on. We'll get all 4 of those started on, and now we can snug them down. To get these tightened all the way down, I'm going to use a small pry bar in the U-joint just to hold it. Now we'll get the nuts onto the studs on the back of the differential, and we can snug those down. And we can torque these to 51 foot-pounds. Now we can get our exhaust hangers lined up. We have one more hanger to get on, just in front of the muffler. Now we need to get our exhaust gaskets back in. On the passenger side, I had one stud stay in. I'm just going to slip that under and line it up. We can go ahead and do the same thing on the other side with the other gasket. I'm using a pole jack to raise this up. You can certainly use a regular jack. Get this lined up. You don't want it quite all the way up because you still want to be able to move the gasket around to line it up while you install the bolts. There can be some tension on these, so you will need to wiggle the headers around while you tighten these up. Now we can go ahead and snug all of these up together. I'm going to get each one just touching before I go ahead and tighten all of them down together. And before I fully snug those up, I'm going to go ahead and tighten them down on the other side, and then we can torque all of them. And we can tighten these to 22.4 foot-pounds. We can go ahead and do the same on the other header. Now we can go ahead and tighten up the bolt. It's just behind the transmission pan. We'll just snug this up. Doesn't need to be too tight. And we can torque this to 26 foot-pounds. We can thread our axle nut on. And we'll snug that down. You want to hold the hub steady while you torque this down. If you have an assistant, you can have them hold the brake pedal. If not, a pry bar or an awl with a hook on it will help hold that still. And we can torque this to 174 foot-pounds. We have a small notch at the end of the axle. I'm going to peen that area right there. And that'll lock that in place and keep it from spinning off. And get the wheel on the hub. I'm going to install one lug nut all the way down. That'll hold our wheel on while we install the rest. Now we can snug these down. We can torque these to 80 foot-pounds in a star pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.